So, Larry just told me before a few minutes ago that no one's ever introduced him to speak at one of his own events. So, for a man who needs no introduction, Mr. Larry Lawler.
Thank you. He says, should I introduce you? I said, I don't know. I've never had that happen before. So it seems like I'm always introducing someone else. That's why, right? All right. We're going to be talking about some marketing this afternoon. Gee, what a surprise, right? I hope that the beginning of what I cover here is you all sit there saying to yourself, I know that, I understand that, I'm doing that, it's already part of what I do. But if not, maybe we'll hit some points that will help you. I really do hope the beginning of it you look at and say, that's not all that exciting. But I'm going to cover a number of marketing topics. Someone asked me at the break, by the way, you're doing marketing. Aren't you a CPA and an EA? What are you doing marketing? I'll tell you the story real quick. And many of you have heard this story if you've been to our other seminars. I went to college to become a marketing and management major. And some guy called the department head told me I had to take this course with the green paper with the little boxes on it. I guess they call that accounting paper, right? And I said, no, I don't do that. I'm marketing and management. And he said, no, it's required. Well, I turned into a total nerd. I fell in love with doing it, became a CPA ultimately, but I never lost the love for the marketing side and the management side. So that's how come I end up doing both things. And I probably am responsible for 90% of the marketing ideas that come out of ASTPS. And I don't mean that as bragging. It's because everybody else does all the hard work and lets me sit around and think about stuff. So bottom line is that's where it all comes from. I will be happy to answer any of your questions based on my own experience, not based on any magic bullets, because marketing is hard. You've got to work at it. You've got to stick with it and make it something that works for you. If it's not working, you've got to tweak it. You've got to either dump it, tweak it, or get something new to replace it. Is there anybody in this room who can do all the marketing they want? If you can do all the marketing you want to do, raise your hand. Look at that. Nobody's got their hand up. Me either. Because I haven't got the money to do all the marketing that I'd like to do and all the different kinds of marketing there is. You have got to be selective. We're going to cover that a little bit too. So let's get started with the presentation here. But I got to show you, I also have a lot of fun with PowerPoint, by the way. It's one of my favorite things. So watch my friend. Here he comes. And the message is, anybody who hasn't joined ASTPS, get out there and fill out a form and join ASTPS, will you? All right, that's enough selling. Okay, we want you all as members, and a few people, in fact, at the break, somebody just handed me another membership. Thank you. We really do want you all in here as members. We want you coming to our technical things. This is actually a seminar that is co-sponsored, as you probably all know, between Michael Rosbrook and myself, so we can do a lot of marketing and technology stuff, but we also do a lot of seminars that are on technical materials. All of our materials and what we're running and all the different seminars are out there for you to take a look at. There's a catalog of materials of recorded stuff. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about, first of all, marketing and some of the basic rules. And this is what's in the beginning. You never have just one. In fact, it was kind of interesting because I know Craig Simpson's also a friend of Dan Kennedy, as we are. And Dan Kennedy's favorite rule is the worst number in business is one. You never want one of anything. You don't want one backup system. You don't want one wife. No, that isn't what he said. That's history. We'll forget that. Bottom line of it is, you never have just one. When you're marketing, you've got to have a number of different things working. And those things include your direct mail, they include your newsletters, your websites, and all the other things that you're hearing from all these different people who've got ways to help you do them. That's what this is all about, being here, is to find better ways to market your practice, grow your practice, and that sort of thing. That's why we're here. We're going to talk about the different things that are on that list right there: print ads, radio ads, television ads. As I look out over the room, it tells me immediately we all, just like me, have a face for radio, so we're good there. But we can talk about TV a little bit if you want to, too. and public speaking we're going to bring up. But each and every one of these things supports the other. You do not do just one of them. All right? If you did, what would happen is you'd be relying on just one thing to support your practice. If something goes wrong with it, you're going to be in trouble. And I've seen people do this where they, I do all my marketing on the internet, and all of a sudden what they're marketing on the internet doesn't work. It stops working, and their business is in trouble. Don't ever do that. Craig, your last speaker was talking about direct mail. We use direct mail. Direct mail is still one of the most effective ways there is of marketing. We're going to talk about that a little bit more than in addition to what Craig did. But the most important thing is you've got to realize that if you keep all these things going together and they convert to sales, and if they don't convert to sales, nothing else is going to happen. You can't pay the bills. You can't do your marketing in the next month or anything else. You must make sales. The best gauge of your success is the results in your bank account. All right, I don't look at all kinds of metrics on our internet marketing. I'll be honest with you, I probably haven't read one of the reports provided by our website guy on how many clicks, how much time spent on the page, how many pages did they go to. He gives me all of these details. Hopefully my partner looks at them sometimes. I don't. What I want to know is what's the balance in the bank account? Because if I got 1 billion clicks and no money, I'd like to reverse those two. Okay? I'd much rather have $1 billion, and I don't care about my clicks. So that's the kind of a marketer I am. I want results. I want to see things happening. So until a sale is made and until money's coming in the door, nothing's going to happen. But remember, is there anybody in here in a big business? I'm not. Our firm is like 10 people, just so you know. I'm not talking from a big business point of view. Anybody got a big business in here, more than 20 people who are doing tax problem resolution work? Good, good. And we're all on the same page here as to what we're looking at. How many things can you afford to do is one of the questions. You know, if you're building a website and you're paying to get some of that done, maybe you're having some content written, that sort of thing. You're sending out a newsletter. You're sending out direct mail pieces. All of these things cost money. And if you're doing a lot of internet marketing, don't tell me that doesn't cost money, because once you start doing enough of it, which we do a lot for ASTPS, you have to start paying per email. Email is not always a free thing, because if you're sending out large volumes, you have to pay for that, okay? So you've got to decide what it is you're going to do, but you should be implementing everything that you can afford. You should have parallel tracks. It isn't a serial situation where, I'm doing direct mail and it's working. Oh, it didn't work for a while, so I'll switch to something else. You should keep them all going together. If something isn't producing what it should for you, then you should be tweaking it or getting rid of it and replacing it. But don't just rely on any one thing. Craig gave you very, very good advice in that area. Talking about the do-it-yourself versus done for you or done with you. That's what those little letters at the bottom of that slide mean. There are various approaches, and it depends on what you're doing. Some things you may have it done for you. Other things you may have it done with you, and other things you may just do it yourself. Craig went over, he had a lot of things that I like here. He talked about your mail lists. I created one mail list that cost me $300, and I've used it multiple times at great results. Guess what I did? I had my son, when he was in high school, sit down with the yellow pages of the phone book and go through and pull out every plumbing contractor. Turned out there are quite a few. And by the way, don't ever do that without using the new phone book. Because if they've gone out of business, they got to pay for the phone book ad up front. So you know that they're all current if you get the current phone book. I remember telling me, I got a lot of guys that said the stuff came back. They went out of business. He had done some other kind of a contractor, painting contractors. And he was getting letters back like crazy. After we had the conversation for a while, I found out that he had been using a year or so old phone book. I said, well, half those guys go out of business in a year. That's why you're not getting good results. So you would sit down, go through, pull out all of them, make up a marketing piece, and send out direct mail to all of them. We came up with about 300 names in ours, and it produced results for us. Very, very low cost, partly because I paid my son dirt wages. But other than that, it really does work. You can sit down and do things for yourself. You've got to be proactive with these. Other things you can have done for you. You can look at some projects and say, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to begin to do it. We're going to have Kim Walsh-Phillips here before we leave. We're working with Kim right now doing social media marketing. If anybody here thinks I have looked at Facebook in the last 5 years, you're out of your mind. But I have a Facebook account. But Julie maintains it for me, and we have Kim Walsh Phillips working on making it work well and that sort of thing. In my mind, that is a totally done-for-you type project. You've got to look at things and say, what can I do in-house? What can I handle on my own? What can I afford to pay for? And start selecting the things that you want to do. But you want to make sure that you're getting them done. And if there's not good results coming out of it, stop spending your money on it. Okay, so that's the way I approach my marketing to begin with. To get into some traditional marketing concepts, they talk about your market, your message, and your media being the three legs of the triangle, or of the three-legged stool, if you will, or of a triangle. And Dan Kennedy, by the way, who's familiar with Dan Kennedy? I figured a lot of you would be. We are too. We're in Dan Kennedy's Platinum Mastermind group. I believe Craig's in his Titanium one. I know Michael is too. But we're too cheap. We went into the Platinum one. But it's working out very well, and we've learned a lot. But this is one of Dan Kennedy's theories all the time. You had to have the market, the message, and the media, and you've got to match them up. And we've been doing it for years, and it was very nice to read Dan Kennedy's stuff and find that it was justified what we were doing, the right thing. We've been trying to find who we want to reach by defining our market. And I'm going to show you how I go about defining a market in just a second. We also want to know, once we figure out who we want to talk to, what do we want to say, or what do we want them to hear, is exactly what I'm looking at. And Craig gave us some insights on that too. What's going on in their mind when you start writing copy and that sort of thing. Don't worry about what's going on in your mind. Worry about what's going on in their mind. What are they thinking about? And then we talk about the media. Where's the best place to put your marketing dollars? What things can you afford to do where you're going to get the best results? So those are the three pieces of it. If you want to talk about those important concepts just a little bit further, I always say go to where the fish are biting. The hungriest of the market is what you want. What we're talking about here, the three different concepts, maybe this expands on them a little bit. That's all I'm trying to do here. But I want to go where the people that I'm reaching are the hungriest, where they're the most eager. Well, in tax problem resolution, there are a certain group of them that are very eager. Which ones are they? The ones that the IRS is hottest on, right? But how do we know who they are? You look out over a room full of people like this. Can you tell somebody's got a tax problem? You can't. We got to figure out how to find out where they are. We'll talk about that in a minute. And you want to be able to reach them affordably. It might be fine to say, hey, I can just send out mass market direct mail to the whole country, and I'm going to hit some people with tax problems, because we know that 1 in every 15 people have some tax problem. Okay, IRS statistics show us that. For marketing purposes, by the way, we use 1 in 60. We look at a community of people and we say, for every 60 people who are income earners in that community, there's going to be a tax problem in there. That warrants being represented by a professional. The guy with an $800 program isn't going to come in and pay you $3,000 to solve his program, is he? If he's got an $800 problem with the IRS, he's going to just pay them. It's cheaper. So you've got to look at that side of it, and you've got to look at how you can reach these people affordably, okay? Also, make it people you want to work with. You sometimes can decide on certain groups of people may not be people that you want to work with. I have one friend of mine who would refuse under any conditions. He's just an accountant. He's not doing tax resolution. But he will never do a doctor's accounting work. He said they're too demanding. They think they know everything. They all think they're God. He says, and I'm sick of them. And he dumped every doctor he had in his practice, and he walked away from them. And he's never done a doctor since. He picked what people he likes to work with. That's what we're talking about. If there's a group of people that you like to work with, you should focus on them. I'm going to talk about one I like a lot when we get to it here in a minute. Offer what they want, not what you have. You may say, hey, I like to do installment agreements. They're really easy, fast, and all that sort of thing. But the people are going to come walking into your office. What are they going to want? Right on the money. They all come in, if they've ever heard of it, they all come in, I want one of those deals. I want one of those offer things. I want one of those offer on compromises. I said, no, it's offer in compromise, okay? And you don't even know what the name of it is, yet you know you want one. Yeah, because it means I don't have to pay them. Well, no, it means that you might be able to pay them less than you owe them if you qualify. So you've got to find out what it is they want, and then when you're talking to them, tailor your language to them, okay? And by the way, I noticed that Craig, when he was up here, he said talk to them in their language, use their lingo. Isn't it more fun to say argot? Because you can say that word to everybody. Nobody knows what it means, right? It just means their lingo too. But I love to do things like that and just maybe stop and say, what do you think that word means? Okay, for here, that's fun. You don't do that in your marketing materials. All right, the media that you're going to use, you want to show up where they are. Let's say the group you picked were truck drivers, over-the-road truckers. Independents, gypsies. In other words, they don't work for a big trucking company. They own their own tractor and they haul somebody else's trailers all over the country. Those are what they call gypsies. They have a very, very high incidence of tax problems. So let's say that you decided that that's a market you want to go after. You want to work with independent truckers. You certainly wouldn't put an ad in Spree magazine where they show off all the new fashions and high architectural designs and things like that. Or in Architectural Digest, would you? You might go to American Trucker, which is a magazine that all the truckers read. So you're picking the media so that you're going where they are. As the old saying goes, you don't find snowboarders at the beach. Well, that's the idea here. You go where they are. The trade publications that are for them, going to the industry events that are specifically for them, things of that nature. And you try to become the expert by speaking at these meetings or being present there. The minute you speak at those meetings, they see you as the expert. So you'll find that they don't know anything about tax problem resolution. So if you can get up and talk about it enough before a group, or get the opportunity to have them listening to you about tax problem resolution, you are going to be the expert in their mind. And that's exactly where we're driving with this whole presentation. We're going to get there shortly. So the first thing you need to do is pick your market. You got to know who it is you're targeting. We're going to talk about that a little more. Then you have to have the message to give them. Once you figure out what your message is for them, what you want them to hear, then you select what is the appropriate media to put that in. Where all of these intersect is the sweet spot. That is how you're going to end up being very, very successful. And you know, when you're talking about direct mail lists and all these other lists earlier, the truth of the matter is a small, well-qualified list will take you a whole lot further than a huge list. IRS delightfully gives me a list of some 400,000 registered return preparers. They now call them an annual filing season program or whatever. They've changed the name. But they give me all of these humongous list of names. Well, that's great, and I can send stuff out to all those people, or I can find a way to willow that list down and get people who are really interested in what we do. And that's what we really do. And otherwise, you're going to be sending out, you're going to be using a shotgun approach rather than a rifle approach, if you will. I'd much rather use a rifle. It costs a lot less to shoot that one bullet than it does just keep shooting shotgun shells and hope you hit something, right? So that's what we're looking for, is the sweet spot. How do you define your market? How do you figure out what your market's going to be? Your market could be things like attorneys. Attorneys have a very high incidence of tax problems compared to the norm. Truckers, realtors, independent, small contractors, people like that. They all have a high incidence of them. So let's say we want to figure that out. So could my market be, let's say, everybody? And I'm going to take an area, and I'm going to limit it because I can't send out to everybody in the world, can I? So I'm going to go 100 miles away from my office, and I'm going to mail something to all those people. That make much sense? Too darn costly, right? So let's go a step further. How about people who are high profile? Like I say, I like to fish in the pond that's well stocked. So, you know, you catch a lot more that way. So I'm going to look at who are the high profile people. Well, what are their identifiers? People who file a Schedule C. People who receive a K-1. People who pay estimated taxes. Aren't these the people that we see over and over and over again getting into tax trouble? Because they don't get their income at the same time that those estimated tax payments are due. And if they have an irregular flow of income, then what's going to happen is they're going to spend, when the money comes in finally, they get their money, they're going to pay off all their bills, and then they're going to look back and see, oh my God, I didn't have the money to pay my taxes, I guess I'll have to do the estimate next quarter. And on it goes. I have had people come into me who've told me for 5 years, I've been paying off last year's taxes when I do this year's tax return. I said, why are you doing that? You're paying over 150% more in taxes than you need to. But they do this all the time. Well, I have trouble keeping track of my records. I've got to keep track of all my expenses. It's a pain in the neck. I never get any money in when the estimates are due. Do we have a solution for that? You all do tax returns, right? Everybody does tax returns here, I'm pretty sure, or almost everybody does. And if you don't do them, you're pretty darn familiar with them, all right? How do you get around the problem of estimated taxes, paying them when their money is irregular coming in? Ron, how do you get around that? Pardon me? Automatic debit. Well, now you're forcing them to pay it. But there's more to that solution. That can be used as part of it. How about every single time they get a payment, whether it's your truck driver who gets paid for being on a run, or your realtor who gets a commission from a sale closing, or whatever else, how about every single time they get a check, you tell them, you calculate it for them, that based upon your income last year, you should be paying in 17.5% of every check, or whatever number you calculate. And tell them, every time you get a check, you take one of these little vouchers, you send it off to the IRS. Doesn't matter whether it's in the April, June, September, or January dates. Estimated taxes can be sent in any time. So what we do to get them back on track is we have these people start sending in estimates every time they get paid. That's why self-employed people get in so much more trouble than people who have wages, because wage earners have their taxes withheld unless they've done something to stop it. So there's ways to deal with these problems, and they think you're a genius when you come up with this. Oh, pay the taxes when I have the money, rather than worrying about paying them when I don't have the money. But it's a very simple thing. When you go and you tell this to a group of people in that situation, in a group meeting and doing a speaking engagement or something like that, they think, well, how clever, I never thought of that. Well, it's simple, send them the money when you have it. How hard is it? It's no brain surgery. That's why I do this, because it's easy. All right, it's not hard stuff. So after you've got their identifiers, you might even get industry specific and say, who fits all those identifiers? Well, definitely realtors do. They have to keep track of all their own expenses, all their own mileage and out-of-pocket money for cleaning up houses and showing houses and staging houses. And they don't get paid until a sale closes, right? So when you're all said and done, the realtor's money is sporadic coming in, his expenses are continuous, and he has to pay estimated taxes. He has to file that owner's Schedule C. And what's the most audited form in the IRS? It's funny how that all goes together, isn't it? How about attorneys? Their success, they didn't get out of law school, they get a nice job, they're going along, everything's wonderful, no more school, thank you, Lord. And all of a sudden, they get successful and they become a partner. What happens then? Oh, K-1s come along, and nobody's doing withholding for them anymore. I get all kinds of young attorneys who come in, I haven't filed my tax return in 3 years, I didn't know what to do. And really, you're an attorney, you're that smart, and you didn't know what to do. You're smart enough to get through law school, pass the bar exam, and you didn't know what to do. Did you ever think of calling somebody? You know, it might work. Get all said and done, we get them back on track. Of course, I don't say that to them, but I'm thinking it most of the time. How about, well, I want to keep them as a client, you know, so. How about contractors, small contractors? Their money irregular? Do they find they finish a job and there's a retention on it? So what's that retention equal to most of the time? Their profit, that's exactly right. So you look at these different industries and they just scream out to you, this is the place to go to find tax problem resolution work. It's there, it's right in front of you, and you're all familiar with it. So make use of that. So when we look at the next thing here, we might say we're going to set thresholds because, as I said, the guy with an $800 problem isn't going to come in and pay you $3,000 to fix it. Right? Although I literally have had that exact situation where a guy came, it wasn't $3,000 we charged, it was about $1,500, but he had an $800 problem. And he said, I would rather pay you than pay them. Music to my ears. I love those words. I really, really do. So bottom line is, there are people who, just as a matter of principle, will still hire you, even though it might cost them more than paying the IRS would. But you can set thresholds where you say, and why are these thresholds? I mean, these aren't meaningful. They're just common ones that we hear on the radio ads from all the big guys who are out there trying to compete with us, which they really can't do because we can always play the local card, which they can't. All right, we're local. We're in people's community. They can come and talk to us. That gives us a big advantage. You all know how to sell, I hope. You know how to close a sale. 95% of the people who sit in front of my desk hire us. The other 5% are people I don't really want. So I quote them a fee so high they leave. And if they don't leave, then I don't mind having them so much. But the bottom line of it is, you've got to know how to sell. You've got to think about it. Selling is, in fact, a very deliberate, learned act. When someone comes in to see me, I love to listen to their story, sit back and talk to them. I will tell them how the different programs work. I never in the initial interview try and solve their problem. I may be able to look at it and say, I know exactly what their problem is and what I can do to solve it. And I know how long it's going to take. But I'm not going to diminish the value of what I'm doing by popping that out in the first 30 seconds of the conversation. I'm going to let them vent. I'm going to let them tell me what they want to tell me. I'm going to listen to them carefully. I'm going to explain how some of the different programs work. And then I'm going to explain to them that I've got to do an evaluation to find out what is the best solution for you. By the way, that protects you too, because if you say something too early on and then you find out later, well, wait a minute, he's defaulted 5 installment agreements. Oh, and the money he owes the government is restitution from tax evasion. He might not have told you that right away, so you don't want to pop off an answer to him too quickly. But you listen to him, you explain the programs to him, you tell him you're going to do an evaluation, you're very professional about it, and then you do things like saying, how would you like to leave with me those notices from the IRS? And let me go through them. A lot of it's boilerplate, it's a lot of stuff junk you don't need to keep. He's got a file this thick. Most of them got a little green certified tag on them and aren't opened yet, right? You've all seen those. Bottom line of it is, oh, God, yeah, I don't want to look at these things again ever. And they never wanted to open them to begin with, right? They've been sitting on their cupboard in their kitchen for the last 6 months. So you take those away from them. Well, what was that? When he said he would leave those with me when I ask. It's one move closer to me, is just a little step. And then I tell him, by the way, my secretary, when she came in, she gathered the information from you. Robin entered it all in the computer. I have the power of attorney here. I can actually start requesting transcripts, which I've got to have to do your case properly if you want to sign these powers of attorney while you're here. Oh, yeah, sure, fine. That'll let you get started? Yeah, One more little step closer to me. Now they've made 2 steps. If you get somebody to make 3 steps closer to you, you should be able to close them. So what's my final step? How would you like to leave me a retainer? And if they leave me a retainer, now usually at this point I've already explained to them what the fee is going to be. But they leave the retainer. I don't care if it's $100. They are not going to leave me $100 just to escape and get away and never come see me again. They're going to escape with that 100 in their pocket if that's the case. But if they leave you any kind of a retainer, you have made 3 steps. By the time you get done with that kind of a process, they've got their arms wrapped around you and they're convinced that you can do the job. So that's a basic selling proposal. Many of you, how many of you have seen the tree of wealth thing that I did on the internet for everybody, or I've done it at different seminars and stuff like that? All right, that's the actual selling and quoting of the price. That's a different thing. I'm not going to go through all that. We don't have that much time. But we can. I think we did that as a webinar, so it should be up there for all members to go look at it anytime. Okay. But that gives you an idea as to how to quote a price using what I call the tree of wealth approach. You do need to know closing techniques. All right, so we've now figured out what our market is, and we've set some thresholds of $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. Why did we do that? What do those thresholds mean? Those specific numbers don't mean anything. All they are is the size of the taxpayer's problem. Because if it's not a big enough problem, it doesn't warrant hiring you. So if you want to filter people out before you even get them in your office, you can set a threshold saying, we do a free consultation if you owe $15,000. That's why you hear that in radio ads all the time. Because they know if they owe over $15,000, they don't mind giving them a free interview because they're going to assume that they can close them if they do it properly. That's what they're thinking about. So the idea being that you set that threshold. Now, being an accountant makes me cheap and retentive too. I don't want that guy who saw my ad and was interested to say, oh, but I don't owe $15,000. I'd really like to talk to them. So I don't necessarily put that threshold in there. We tell them about it on the phone. That gives our interviewer on the phone, and I do not do interviews on the phone, neither does my partner. We have a girl that does them in the office. She does almost all of them. And she will discuss with them, oh, well, your problem is under $15,000. The free consultation has a threshold of $15,000 a problem. But Larry will be happy to talk to you, or John will be happy to talk to you. They'll charge you a $300 consulting fee. They'll spend 45 minutes to an hour with you if you want to come in. And when you leave, you will probably know exactly what you need to do to solve your problem yourself. But your problem isn't big enough to really hire a professional to do the whole thing. Half the time when they come in, you can tell them, I got good news and I got bad news. The good news is you don't have to pay the $300 fee. The bad news is you owe 3 times as much as you thought you did. So then all of a sudden they get the free interview, but they've also got a big enough case to make it worthwhile hiring you, right? So that's going to happen sometimes. But all that is a threshold that you set to try and filter out if you don't want a bunch of small cases coming in. You don't want to spend a lot of time on that. And I've had some practitioners tell me, I don't want to hear about any case that's under $15,000 or under $20,000. Okay, because they know they can't get the fee they want out of it. Those are the kinds of things you want to think about. So let's move over to talking about the different types of media that we might use. Hey, Michael, would you stir up one of my people and have somebody find me a bottle of water back there? It's dry. I'm talking too much. Okay, first thing I want to talk about is, and by the way, this whole wheel of things here is just a bunch of different ones, and there's a lot of other marketing things we can do, but let's just look at some of them and what's involved in doing them. Direct mail. Okay, now you just had a very nice presentation. I don't know if you realized how lucky we are to have had Craig come and do that, but he is one of the top people in direct mail in the country. I read his whole book. I had never met Craig before or anything else, but I knew 2/3 of what he was talking about already because he wrote a great book. So if you want to, you can go look up his book and buy it. It's worthwhile. He's a very smart fellow when it comes to analyzing data and doing mailings. So what I'm going to give you now is the not-so-smart guy's view of it. This is my view, okay? But Craig has really got all the tools in place to do this. Okay, mailing list. Where do you get them? I told you how you can create one yourself, right? How about what's an FTL? There you go, federal tax lien. If there's a federal tax lien list, where can you get a federal tax lien list? They're public record. You can go to the courthouse or the county hall or wherever, however they file them in the area where you live. They file them, but they're a public record. You can also buy the lists of federal tax liens from various companies that sell those lists, that being the broker. You can co-op lists. What if you happen to, let's say your practice you have limited to doing nothing but tax problem resolution work. Charlie, that's what you're about to do right now, right? He's going to make his practice nothing but tax problem resolution work. He's going to have a firm, happens to be headed by his daughter, who he can co-op with. She's going to have a list of people. He's going to have his own list of people. They're neither one of them doing the same thing. He's not going to do tax prep and things like that, and she's not going to do tax problem resolution work, okay? Thank you, John. I appreciate that. Very nice. So he can say to her, look, I will mail out to my list a solicitation on your behalf to get tax return business for you. You take your list and mail it out to anybody who has a tax problem that you're referring them to me. You could do that with other industries. You could do that with an attorney. How about a bankruptcy attorney? How about a mortgage broker? People like that. These people run into people with tax problems. What happens to the mortgage broker when he runs into somebody with a tax problem? The whole deal stops. It's over with, right? So he would really like to know someone who can get that federal tax lien released so that the deal can proceed and he can write his mortgage. Or if you're the realtor, your sale stops, you don't get the commission because there's a federal tax lien on their property. These people are people with lists. You can co-op with them, have them mail to their list, and you mail on their behalf to your list. It's a way of getting more mailing power without having to buy the lists. You can buy lists. You can self-compile them. I told you how I did it with my son. That shows you how cheap I am, right? And you can do that same thing in your practices. You all have databases. You all have phone books. You have lots of tools available to you. Is there anybody in here who does not have a database of all of their clients and all of their contacts and things like that in some form or another on the computer? Is there anybody that doesn't? So you can print out that list and you can mail to them. And you say, well, they don't have tax problems, but they all have contacts. So you take your own database and mail to it. Just because they don't have a tax problem doesn't mean you're going to exclude them because they all have contacts. I think, what's the number? I think the number is something like 250 people. Every person has that many contacts. Well, if that's the case, and you send it out to your database and you've got 1,000 people in that database, that's an awful lot of people. Somebody's going to have a tax problem in that group, aren't they? If 1 in every 60 is a candidate to become your client, you've got to get something out of that. How many people know who to go to when they have a tax problem? Very few. Excuse me, who is it? Marco Rubio. Stop in the middle, have a drink. That was an old election, wasn't it? Okay, but you've got to get some kind of a list. Once you get a list, one of the problems you're going to have with it is you've got to do some copywriting because you have got to have the message to send out to your list. So, you got some insights from Craig about how to write copy. What's going on in their mind? What is their problem? What do they want solved? It's not I want to sell them an offer in compromise because that's my highest set of fees. It's what are they looking for? So I talk about how to end the nightmare, how to get the sleepless night, how not to wake up in the middle of the night worrying about whether your bank account's going to get levied, how not to be worrying about whether or not your employer's going to get a notice to start sending money in. Those are the things that are in their head. The words offer and compromise are very commonplace to us. The IRS and taking my money is what's in their head. So those are the things you want to think about when you start writing this copy. You can hire professionals to do it. You can also train yourself to do it. And I over the years, have read probably 15 different books. And you know, anytime, you realize if you read 3 books, you're an expert? You know that? In this country, based on the number of books people read from the day they get out of high school till the day they die, if you read 3 books on any one subject, you are an expert. So if you want to teach yourself how to write copy, there's a whole bunch of really good books out there. Dan Kennedy's written stuff. He's got a course on it. Bob Bly, there's several of them who've got great courses. You can teach yourself to do it. In the interim, if you want to hire somebody, or there's this thing called research. Now, when you went to college, they called it plagiarism. But it's research because you're stealing from more than one person. Okay? Go on the internet. Go to our website, go to everybody else's websites in here, look at the wording and see what kind of copy is being used and what hits home. Go do the research if you can't write worth a lick. You will find stuff that you can patch together and make it good enough to get yourself going. So you've got to have copy. By the way, some of these things will apply to the other topics we're going to talk about too, so I'm spending a little extra time here. You have to pay for direct mail with printing, with postage and everything else. When Craig was talking, he said a long sales letter will work better than a postcard. I agree with him most of the time, but not always. We did a realtor program where we sent out a postcard and we sent out at least 4-page, might have been a 6-page, I'm not even sure, long sales letter. They both produced equally. However, the difference in those 2 programs was that the 2 were asking, it was more or less a direct lead generation rather than a direct response thing. We were trying to get people to identify themselves as having an interest in tax problem resolution. So what we sent out was a postcard telling them, would you like to get a book called Solve Your Tax Problem Now? Call the office and give us your address. We'll mail it to you free. No charge, no mailing, no handling, no nothing. It's totally free. The long sales letter said the same thing. The postcard actually produced just as well in that case. But remember, that's a 2-step thing when you're starting to do lead generation as opposed to direct response. Okay? So those are a couple of very commonplace marketing terms as to which you're doing, whether you're doing direct response or lead generation. We had to design a postcard. Designing a letter wasn't hard. It was pretty simple to put that together. It was write a letter, put it on your letterhead and send it out. But there had to be design with the postcard. So you have to have someone who's got an eye for designing something that's attractive. You can go to a mail house. They will not only design it for you if you want. They'll lay the whole thing out. They'll mail it out. They'll put the postage on it. And they'll probably get you a better rate than you can get on postage anyhow. The mailing houses have set up in a way to do that by how they sort and how they put things together. They can get better prices than you get just by mailing things out, depending on how big your list is, whether or not it's worthwhile. On top of that, you have to dedicate manpower. If you do this stuff in-house, you have your people tied up doing it. Okay? I'll give you a perfect example. Do you think all those little blue bags there came about by magic, fell from the sky? No. To come here, first of all, Julie had to go on the internet and order the bags and have them printed with the logo that we've had designed. And then when they came into the office, 3 or 4 people got together in the office and they took all of the materials that are in there and they stuffed the bags and put everything together. So you had all those things. Anytime you do one of these things, if you fool yourself thinking, I'm doing it in-house so I'm not spending any money, wait a minute, those 3 or 4 people, all the time they were doing that, were getting paid, weren't they? Keep that thing in your mind, and when you're doing something, what are your opportunity costs? What could I have had them doing other than stuffing bags? It might work that you say it's not the best thing in the world to do it in-house. So you've got to think about these things when you pick a marketing approach. If you go from direct mail, let's talk about print for just a minute. On print, you still have to have an expense involved. You're going to have an investment involved, is what I'm trying to say. You have local newspapers, You have regional newspapers, you have community newspapers, you have trade newspapers. All of these different things are a place where you can put a print ad. You can also print up flyers and distribute them. You can go through a parking lot and put them on everybody's windshield, as long as the parking lot police don't find you doing it. Target audiences, you got to figure out who they are, who you're going to profile. Well, I think we just figured that out a few minutes ago, didn't we? We talked about who are very high-profile people. Anytime you see an industry that gets into where they have to file a Schedule C, or a lot of them have to file Schedule C, small painting contractors, plumbers, roofers, electricians, painting contractors, each one of them could be a separate group. By the way, when you write a letter, you don't write it, "Dear small contractor." You write it, as though you were a painting contractor. You understand it. One of the reasons that I love the Realtor program, I started out when I was a kid as a realtor. I went and got a New York State license as a realtor, and I went to work in a real estate office till I found out it was too damn hard, so I became a CPA instead. But the bottom line of it was I was sick and tired of running little old ladies around town who, instead of going into the house I wanted to show them, were walking into a store right next door to that house. How they had strategically picked the address of the house they wanted to go look at. Took me a couple of weeks to figure that all out, what they were doing. But you have got to look at these things and see who is it you're going to deal with and have a profile for them. Craig, I think, used the word create an avatar. By create an avatar, he's the same thing you've heard years and years and years. You've heard people say, who's your ideal client? Right? You're supposed to figure out who is your ideal client. When you write copy, you write it just as though you're writing to that one person. The way of looking at that is that you write to one but speak to many. And by that, what we're saying is you write the letter like it's going to one particular person who you're picturing. However, it goes out to everyone, and people will identify with that. That's what they mean by creating an avatar or a profile for someone. Somebody's got to design the ads. Somebody's got to do the copywriting. Again, that can be professional or staff, same thing we just said a minute ago. And then how often am I going to do it? If I'm putting something in the newspaper, do I put it into the daily newspaper once a week? Do I put it into the daily newspaper every day? I actually had an ad, and this is kind of fun how this worked. We'll talk about testing a little bit in a couple minutes, but I had an ad that we ran for a long time, little 2-inch ad, 2 columns by 2 inches, and we ran it for a long time. And we looked at it and said, that little ad isn't generating as much as it should be right now. It was still doing, it was working, but it isn't generating as much as it should. What if we ran it every other week? We ran it like every Thursday for the longest time. So we started running it every other Thursday, which cut our bill virtually in half, right, for our marketing costs for that. Guess how much drop-off we had? None. And I had people coming in saying, I see your ad every week. And I say, no, you don't, but I'm not telling you that. As long as you think it's in there every week, that's exactly what we wanted to happen. You got to look at things and tweak them. Well, once we cut the bill in half, how do you think my return on marketing was then? A whole lot better, wasn't it? If it was working okay before, it got a lot better when I cut the bill in half. So you can look at things, tweak them. You can look at community newspapers that come out once a week. Maybe you only go into it once every other week. So there's ways of figuring out how much advertising you can do and what you can afford. You should be trying all of it, but print ad very often is pretty expensive. And the bigger your community is, usually the more expensive it's going to be. If you're trying to put something into a newspaper in LA or New York City, it's going to be a lot more expensive than it is in Buffalo, where I'm from. And in Buffalo, it's too expensive, in my opinion. Radio and TV, all right, you again now have the problem of picking demographics. Instead of the newspaper's demographics, now you have to look at radio and TV's demographics. What audience do they approach? Do you think going on the cartoon channel is going to do you any good with your tax problem resolution ad? Probably not, right? You might do okay on a sports channel, because I think the avatar that most of us would have is probably a male, 35 to 60 years old, who has earned money regularly, who has been employed, maybe has changed jobs, things of that nature. So what kinds of TV shows, for example, pull that demographic? And the TV stations, radio stations, they can tell you all of those things. They have those statistics. Their statistics are audited. They're not, in my opinion, terribly accurate, but they give you at least an idea as to what's going on. We have found sports shows are very good because of the avatar of the male 35 to 60 years old being a strong audience in those sports shows, ESPN, places like that. We have found some other ones that work. We tried, for example, the Life Channel. That's where it's all women watching it. Guess what happens when it's all women in the audience? Number of cases, first of all, drops off. However, you've stirred them up to go move their husband to get something done. Because it's usually the guys that are in trouble, it seems. So you got to target your audience, figure out what your demographic is. When you talk to a radio station, TV station, I think Mitch has probably interviewed 4 or 5 radio stations in the last month or two because we're thinking about doing something different than what we've been doing, but it would involve radio. We've got a local TV station who here's a decision we had to make. We were on Time Warner Cable for 4 years, regularly. We did it, I shouldn't even admit this in front of the room. We did such a bad job of paying attention to it that after 4 years of being on there, John and I sat down one day and said, we got to analyze that and just find out if it's worth it or not. We had not been doing what I'm telling you all to do and track your results. When we sat down and did a detailed analysis, because we track where every client comes in, when they come to the office, how'd you hear about us, all that sort of thing, turned out that every bit of money that came in from the Time Warner TV ads, which were great ads, they really were, at the same time went back out to Time Warner to pay them. So we were left with all the work. The only thing we really got out of all those TV ads was it did grow our reputation in the community. So there was some good, there was some coattails to it. But we stopped it. We said, no, it's not producing, because something should produce for you at least 3 to 1, 5 to 1, at least as your return on something like that. So what we did is we stopped that, and now we're talking to a local TV station, but they're not cable. They're broadcast TV, so they go into everybody's home, and they're likely to, because they run all of the old TV shows and stuff like that, they're much less expensive, and they're more likely to run your ads at prime times that you want. It takes time and energy to follow these things up and find out who you can deal with. So these are some of the things you want to think about when you start deciding, how am I going to spend my marketing dollars? Then you got to look at the duration of the ad, the time of the day that it's going to run, and you can make deals with them sometimes. I had a radio program, a call-in program about taxes. It ran at 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock in the morning on Sunday mornings. Huge audience of none. I'm sure there was no one listening to that program. However, here's the deal we made with the radio station. Yes, we want that half hour, and we will do it, and we will record it, and we will have that available to us if we want it. But on top of that radio station, we want you to run promos for us for our tax show. And they said, oh, we'll do that. The promos were about a quarter of the price as if we had run the same exact ads, because when we looked at the cost of the radio program, it was dirt cheap. On top of that, I said to him, what if I have a guest and he wants to help sponsor the show? And the very first guest I had was my attorney. He's been my attorney for over 35 years. And I had Tim O'Mara, my attorney, on there with me, and we discussed some legal aspects and taxes and things like that. And he paid for the show that week. You can do that. They agreed to let me sell the advertising. They put together a little ad for him, ran it on the show, and everything else promoting his law firm. You can find ways to deal with these people. So what I had was a radio program where I could say, I'm the tax guy on the radio. To anybody who asked, it was true. I didn't say that no one listens to and no one ever hears, right? But I had promos running through the day. And the promos, a lot of people heard. So it was kind of interesting. I go into Starbucks after the Time Warner ads. How much money did I make on Time Warner? None. I go into Starbucks, I'm like a celebrity. Everybody knows, oh, I saw you on television. You were in my house last night. You were in my living room. I said, yeah, I wasn't in your house. I was in your living room and on your TV. Say that carefully. So, my wife might get funny about that. But the bottom line of it is, we did get notoriety out of it. We did get, a lot of recognition out of it. We didn't make any money. And that was a real serious problem. We had not done the right thing as far as tracking the marketing. We track everything else, and we had ignored the television. So after learning that lesson, we now are much more careful about tracking everything. And I suggest to you that you want to do that too. Radio and television are both pretty expensive, but I think if you were to ask Michael Michael, am I wrong if I say that in the beginning years, radio made your business? And it grew to over 100 employees? So radio can work. There's proof of it right there. I remember the ad with, oh, that screaming in the background. Yeah, that's Michael talking to the IRS. That was part of the ad. Right? You got a few of them? Oh, good. Oh, that's wonderful. So he's got some good ones. But you should think about it. But you're going to have to decide on the duration of the ad. Is it going to be a 10-second, a 30-second, a minute, or whatever? Are you going to try and run a radio show? These are all things you want to think about before you decide to go ahead. Let's move over and talk about the web. Everybody wants to advertise on the web. Why? Because they think it's cheap. They don't have to spend any money. If you do a good job on the web, you're going to be spending either time, energy, or money or something to get it done, because you can't just let it sit there and be static forever. You're not going to get anywhere with it. You've got to have updates to it, and you've got to be adding to it and expanding it and marketing it. All of your other marketing should drive people to that web if you want them to. So we used to have a Yellow Page ad, and the best thing about our Yellow Page ad was it said, go see our website. Because that way at least it drove it to them. Why don't you want to advertise on it? Yellow Pages? I didn't even put this in the presentation. Why don't you want to do Yellow Pages? Let's say I change that and I say, why don't you want to do Yellow Pages on the internet? Because they now have Yellow Pages on the internet, right? Well, why wouldn't you want to do those? Where's all your competition? They're going to go look up tax problem. Everybody who solves tax problems is going to be listed on that page. Why the hell direct people to all of your competitors? Why would you do that? I tried to tell the guy, our Yellow Page salesman years ago, I want a separate caption where I'm the only one in it. And back then we got it. They had a caption for tax problem resolution. And we were the only ones listed. I got 4 or 5 good-sized competitors in Buffalo, but none of them were listed under that. They didn't even know the caption existed because we made them create it for it. You don't want to send your business to someone who competes with you, do you? Doesn't make any sense. Okay, as far as the updating and the frequency, that's the hard part with the website. As far as keeping that going, you should regularly update it. You should be adding things to it, whether they be articles or tips or things like that, depending on what you're using it for. If you're using it to get tax problem resolution, some people like to put case descriptions up there, case studies. And you heard Craig talking about case studies working in direct mail as well. They can work on your website too. You want to think about whether you want the low cost or you're willing to spend money on your website. Everybody can go to Wix.com or places like that and set up a website. I've looked at some websites, and if you took the name out and put a different name in, everything else would stay the same. The website was so cookie cutter. I mean, there are companies out there that do them, and they do a fine job for what they do, but they're identical to everybody else's website. They have 3 or 4 different formats or themes that they use. And if you bounce around on the internet enough, you're going to find that you could just swap names out and it wouldn't change anything else on the website. So you've got to be careful. If you want to do a website and do a good job on it, you're going to spend some money, you're going to spend some time on it. And you're going to have that ongoing maintenance. How about referral system? Now we're getting a little dearer to my heart, because how much does this cost me? If I have a good referral system, it doesn't cost me much of anything. And when does it cost me money? When it works. All right? When do you give gifts to somebody who referred to you? After they've made the referral. Right? You don't send them gifts necessarily in advance. Try that maybe to build your system up a little bit, but typically you don't do that. You've got to be very good. You've got to stay on top of it and keep those relationships going. So what's your investment in the beginning in a referral system? Let's say you do tax problem resolution work. Do you get referrals from other accountants? I heard one yes and one sure. And all the rest of you were pretty quiet. I'll tell you what. Here's the way it works. If you're an attorney, you say, go call so-and-so, he does real estate. Go call so-and-so, they do matrimonials. Go so-and-so, they do corporate work, right? Not what attorneys do all day long? What do accountants do? They conspire with their clients. Decide what they want to do, get in the car and drive back to the office and go, how the hell do I do that? Because they're not going to call another accountant and send their client down the road. Those clients are valuable. That's what gives their practice value, is by having recurring business, clients who stick with them for years. Right? Bankruptcy attorney gets out of bed, he's got to get new clients every single day of the week. Accountants know there's value in their practice by keeping their clients, so they don't refer. How do you get them to refer? You get them to refer by telling them, I will be happy to take this problem that I know you don't really want to deal with, solve it, never make you look bad, and when I'm finished, I will send the client back to you. I just gave you the essence of a 4-page letter to an attorney. That's all it's really got to have in it. And you send that out to the attorney, you send that out to other accountants, you send that out to other enrolled agents, and they will make referrals to you because they don't really want to deal with the stuff we want to deal with. And you can get referrals from them, but you must proactively go after it. Once you get the first referral from someone, the best thing you can do is send them something that is valuable to them in some way. And I don't mean you send them diamond rings or buy them a new car, but you might send someone dinner for 2 and 2 movie tickets for sending you a referral. And they realize that, oh, that was pretty nice. I like getting that. And that was a nice way of them to saying thank you to me. You recognize them and you show them that you appreciate it. And then, more importantly, even than that little gift, is do a good job and make them look good for having referred you. I always make sure I make the comment something like, he did you a big favor here. He didn't try and handle something that he doesn't do all the time. He knew this was important for you. And he sent you over here because he wanted you to get it done the best way as quickly as possible. And he did you a favor by sending you over here. And I build the guy up by having sent the business to me, and it's a good thing to do. I've had accountants call me up and say, man, I don't know what you said to that guy, but it's like he loves me now. And I told him that you did a good job for him. The only problem he had to be with he didn't pay his taxes or whatever. Question?
There used to be a company called Cookies by Design. They would make the cookies about the size
Yep.
of a pizza.
Yep, I've heard of them.
I gave it to a broker one time. I actually referred somebody to me. I had 10 clients on that office.
How many?
10.
All right, if you didn't hear everything he said, Cookies by Design made these big, the size of a pizza, cookies. And he sent it over to someone who ended up, in return, referring 10 clients for that one big cookie. That probably cost you a whole $40 for that cookie, didn't it? So it is something that is very, very important to do that. All right, so you know, I don't need to cover all of these individual things. I just want to get you to start thinking about what you do when you start a marketing program. Define what it is. Okay, we're going to do a referral plan. Okay, we're going to do radio. Okay, we're going to do direct mail. Figure out what all the parts and pieces are and make yourself a marketing budget. It's nothing more than working on a piece of lined paper, adding up the numbers, or you can use that stuff with green boxes on it, or on the computer. But figure out what you're going to do and lay out a plan and what it's going to cost so that you can keep it up consistently, because consistency does matter. And that's how you can track results, is if you're doing something consistently and you're not seeing the results come in, then you know you either change it or dump it or get something new in its place, right? Okay. Things that you do that are immediate and memorable. How many people in here are 5-year members of ASTPS? Been in 5 years. Oh, really? That's all that's here right now? How about 10 years? Same guys. Almost the same guys. Well, you guys, I'll give you a little heads up. You got a prize coming. We started something new for 5-year members. You know why? Because we love them. We love 5-year and 10-year members. And so you recognize people. People appreciate things like that. There's a reason to do that sort of thing. We're going to move on to one more thing here. Whoops, I went too far. Public speaking. For that, you need a certain amount of training. For a certain number of people, you have got to get past the fear of it. And as soon as you start viewing it as just having a conversation with someone, maybe with some other professional, whether it be a realtor or whatever else, you'll realize it's not all that difficult. You know, I've never gone and spoken to a group of people who are not CPAs, enrolled agents, and attorneys, who have asked me any question that I found challenging. Never. And I've done tons of these realtor presentations, stuff like that. They ask basic questions that you can all answer. Or if you're just getting started in this area, you soon will be able to answer if there's any new practitioners in here. But you have to put together a few things. You have to put together a presentation to do. You have to put together the handouts to do. Do you see anything on that list, by the way, that's going to take much effort as far as, many dollars? Not a thing on there that takes much in dollars, right? And as far as time goes, once you've put it together, you can give the same presentation over and over and over again. So now we're talking about just every time you go out and do it, maybe 45 minutes time. I have been giving realtor presentations for several years, and I find on average I get over 4 cases per presentation. Now the average number of people in that class is going to be, in that group is going to be 25. There's usually 50 in an office, 50 realtors attached to salespeople attached to the office, and only half of them show up for the sales meetings. Because the ones that are in all the lower ones, by the way, are the ones that show up for the sales meetings because they know they better, because they aren't performing as well as the others. But the ones that are all performing better, they don't show up. Later on, they hear about, oh, you should have been here. We had a guy came in and talked about taxes, and there were all kinds of good stuff we learned. And I sometimes get calls from people who were not in the meeting. Hi, you were just at my office at Century 21, and you talked about taxes and everything else. Oh, yeah, were you in the group? Oh, no, I wasn't there. But other people in the office told me about it. So you get a little more reach than just the people that are in there. But I can walk out of that meeting of 25 people and end up with 4 cases. And I didn't spend any money. It didn't cost me anything but to print out some copies and do some handouts. And I've got a whole package put together that we're going to talk about in a few minutes as to how to go about doing that. It is a minimal cost thing to do. You become the talent. If you don't want to do the speaking, you can train someone else in your office perhaps to do it, or if you have a partner who might do it. My partner and I have got a very fine agreement. He refuses, and I said, okay, I'll do it. So, you know, he wins. But it's not his kind of thing to do. He's great talking with people in the office all the time, but he doesn't want to go and talk to groups. So that's fine. Figure out what works for you. But the program that I'm talking about that we are going to tell you about in just a couple of minutes that we have put together is to give you the speaking tools, the selling tools, the presentation, the way to get the presentation, the way to get the booking for the presentation, who to talk to and how to talk to them, sample letters, all of the parts and pieces of doing what we've been doing for a long time. I told you, or I think I said earlier, that direct mail is one of the best ways of doing marketing. It's probably the second best one. We use the federal tax lien list. We get good results out of it, but it does not compare to the realtor program. And realtor, by the way, you can pull that word out, stick in attorney, pull that word out, stick in contractor. This same concept works with all different types of entities as long as they're people who have a higher than normal tax problem frequency. So the public speaking one is far and away my favorite one. The costs are very minimal for doing it, and it's like a spigot. If you're busy, you don't go do any. And if you think things are slowing down a little bit, you run out and do a few presentations, and all of a sudden you got a bunch more cases. I love that part of it. That is one of my favorite things about it, is that I can turn it on and turn it off. During seminar season, this last seminar season, I think I did 14 seminars on the road. I didn't have much time for a whole bunch of work coming into the office and have trouble getting it done because a lot of it I'm doing remotely or in between seminars, that sort of thing. I didn't do many realtor presentations. As soon as things slow down, I'll be out doing realtor presentations, and a whole bunch of casework will be in the office from doing it, and it works. So let's move on from that. I said in the beginning, when we talked about marketing, never have just one. But if you had to pick just one, what would you pick? That was the question I asked myself. Because when I was putting this presentation together, by the way, I had no idea what I was going toward. I just sat back and I said, of all the marketing stuff we do, we're going to talk about marketing. What is the one that I would pick if I had to pick one out of all the different things that we do? And it, without a doubt, came out to be the realtor program, as far as what the results of it are and so on. So that's the one that I would pick to be the number one thing. And we'll go back to that little graphic that we had before. Get you the whole thing up there. And when you look at the market, it's realtors. When you look at the message, we go in with a 3-part presentation. We're going to show them how they can close sales where they might run into a problem, like having a federal tax lien, or how we can help them get rid of that federal tax lien. We're also going to make another part of that is how the realtor himself can save money on his taxes or stay out of trouble with his taxes. And the third part, if they happen to have a tax problem, we can help them with that too. You think maybe number 3 is the real reason I'm there? All right, earlier when Craig was talking, he talked about running a seminar, okay, doing a presentation on tax problem resolution. Don't do it. Stay home and watch TV first. Because Craig was wrong, he didn't understand. But someone said something about my business is different. Someone who came up to the mic actually used those words. I almost jumped out of my skin. Your business is not different. You just have to find the way to do things. When Craig said run a seminar on tax problem, my partner and I had a nice evening chat one evening starting from 7 to 9, waiting for people to show up. When we ran one, we marketed it on the radio, we sent out direct mail pieces, we had a conference room in Rochester, New York, we had food and beverage brought in, and the two of us sat there and had coffee together. And nobody showed up. Not a single soul. Not even any of the people who called and said they were going to show up. Why? What the heck was the problem? Now, Craig just told you, run a seminar. That's a good way to get business. That's exactly what it was. They would not walk into the room and say, in so many words, I got a tax problem, even if the whole room was filled with people with a tax problem. There was no way people were going to show up for that. Well, we smartened up. We figured that out. And what we ended up doing is saying, okay, how can I run a seminar? Well, let's see. If I run a seminar for a target group like realtors, I've got to have a reason to be there. I can't just go in and say, you guys, realtors, all have tax problems. You guys don't do what you're supposed to do with your taxes. That probably wouldn't fly too well, would it? But if I go in on the basis that I'm coming in to show you how, if you run into a problem with a federal tax lien and you can't close a sale, we can help you. Here's how we do it, and give them some insights as to how we do it. And then if you are doing your own tax return, which we know you all have to do, you have to file that horrible Schedule C, which is the highest and most audited form in the IRS, then you're going to have to do that as well. And if you happen to have a tax problem, we can help you. So I'm there on the premise of those first two, but I always tell them that we're going to do the three. I tell them what the three topics will be, and we go and do a 3-point presentation. And it works. So we have the market, the message, and the media coming together right there, and that's your realtor seminar. Could that be a small contractor seminar? Could it be an attorney seminar? Maybe a local bar association seminar, something like that? All of those kinds of organizations, trade groups, attorney groups, local bar associations, they're always looking for guest speakers. So it's not hard to get the presentations, to get scheduled to do them. Here's our friends, the realtors. Yes, sir.
If you would switch out realtor for attorney or contractor, I wouldn't change bullet number 1 in the message. Because what attracting the realtor is closing the sale. That's money in the pocket. So what's the bait, for lack of a better term, for the attorney or the contractor?
When I go to attorneys, I'm glad you mentioned that, by the way, because along with the program I'm talking about, there is a bonus presentation that I give you for doing attorneys. Son of a gun. And I didn't set him up, honest. I think Craig set a couple of those people up, though. Those were really good testimonials you guys gave him. What I do is I change it to what the IRS is trying to do to attorneys. How IRS looks at attorneys. And if you read the IRS manual on auditing attorneys, you find a lot of good meat in there. And the presentation that we give with that, we actually have an attorney presentation that is a bonus that goes along with it, just to show people how to take this exact program and duplicate it for another group. So that is part of the program. So we actually give you one, but it basically focuses on how the IRS deals with attorneys and what kinds of problems attorneys get out of the IRS. This is what happens, by the way. It's fun to show this one to the realtors. It's an actual number. In their career, every single realtor just about can expect to be audited if they stay in the business for any length of time. About 90% of them get audited. That little graphic gets their attention right away. They see that they're in the middle of that whole thing. And that's it. And I have 11 minutes left? I'll take questions or whatever. Otherwise, I'll let you go early. Yes? Thank God you've been listening. That's what I've said about 6 times. Yeah. It's good for attorneys. It's good for contractors. You're going to take the same exact concept and apply it. That's right. Exactly. Yeah, you can tweak the whole thing. I've actually had a couple people who have done that. They took the whole thing and changed it for themselves. There were certain things in the presentation that we created. And they said, I don't want to talk about that. I'm not an accountant. I'm an attorney. In fact, Charles, did you change yours to make it more attorney-like rather than just accounting-like? Yeah, I thought you did. Yeah. But you can do that. I'm just giving you all the tools to start with. So any questions on it? Obviously, I'll be over here. I'll be here for the next 2 days. I'll be happy to answer. But anything else? You got a question, Ray?
Actually, I want to share something.
Okay.
Okay, since we're all in this together, I've been doing seminars around the country for a number of years. Okay, and one of the things that I found to be very effective in bringing people in is that I make it an educational seminar, and I don't call it tax problem solving or anything like that. I call it compliance seminar, and it's an education about compliance, and we get to cover everything that you basically highlighted in your wonderful presentation. So looking at this here, I haven't done it actually in a couple of years. I've been out due to health reasons, but you just reinforce that that is, I think, the best way to do it. The issue now is that with the changing in the economy, okay, what I'd like to hear from you is, even lawyers, I know lawyers who cannot make mortgage, okay?
Right.
So what should be the threshold for the target audience? And I'll wait to hear
You say the threshold for the target audience? You mean when you're picking your profile?
Demographically speaking.
Are you talking about the $10,000, $15,000, $20,000?
No, because
thing?
I mean, to me that's all academic. It doesn't really mean anything. Okay, he could be just as valuable at 25,000 as somebody at 200,000. Because if he's not going to pay,
I promise you, my fee will be higher for the 200,000.
No, I'm saying if he's not going to pay, he's not going to pay. So
right.
The issue is, what are we looking at? Is there certain geographical locations in the United States today that are better than others? And I'll wait to hear your answer.
I think we've got successful practitioners all over the country. And I mean, if you look at, I actually have a huge map in my office. Several of you have been there, seen it. It's the whole United States. It covers a whole wall, and it's got all of the enrolled agents dotted on it. And it's like the two edges of the country are just jammed with enrolled agents and things like that. In the center of the country, there's not that many. But I hear from people in both coasts, they got more work than they know what to do with. They're busy all the time. So even though you've got the highest concentration of professionals in there, you still end up with more than enough work there. So, yeah. Maybe you need to look at your list construction. That'd be a good thing to grab Craig and talk to him about, because he is super at that. Good, that's good. He said some of his lists haven't been producing as well as they should. List brokers are all over the place as far as quality goes. Some of them are very good and other ones are not. Someone who specializes in that area is better. Okay, Joel? Okay. Excellent. So you're doing a referral program, and as part of his referral program, he's making sure that he's keeping the attorneys and others, as accountants who refer to him, in the loop all the time, putting them on the power of attorney, so on and so forth, which is a very smart thing to do. I agree completely. And then you're following up and giving them a nice dinner certificate, something like that. Beautiful. Okay, take a break.